first and foremost is, you said it all. Africa is the place to be. I mean, for all the reasons that you said, I'm not worried about Africa for any reason. First, if you look at the demography of Africa, you got 75% of the population less than the age of 35. 600 million people between the ages of 15 and 35. So that tells you that Africa is going to be workforce of the world, the labor workshop of the world, where you have skills, talents, entrepreneurship that will unleash a lot of innovation around the world. Secondly, you were just talking about the issue of agriculture. Look, to feed the world, 9.5 billion people, 10 billion people by 2050, that's not going to come from anywhere in Asia. It's not going to come from Latin America or US or Canada or anywhere in the world, or China, by the way. It's going to come with Africa. Now, take a look at the energy transition in the world, what you were just mentioning, whether it is lithium-ion batteries, whether it is electric vehicles, whether it's platinum, whether it's copper, whether it's graphite, whether it's any of this lithium-ion, all is in Africa. So what Africa actually does with these resources will shape the future of the world that we are talking about. So I am not worried at all about Africa. In fact, I am excited about Africa. And what I want to say is to take a look at a continent with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, the population that we have of 1.4, almost 1.5 billion people, a market size of $3.4 trillion. So what we have to do is trade among ourselves, build infrastructure, integrate our financial markets, our stock exchanges, and of course have the right policies, macroeconomic and fiscal policies that attract investment. In fact, for the investors that are here, what I want to say is if you're not investing in Africa, actually, I'm going to ask you, where are you investing in? Look, the fact of the matter is Africa is going to be critical for the world. You were talking about the new changes, in the world. Yes, of course. President Trump was elected by the American people to develop America, and he's going to do a great job at it. I have no doubt about it. But my role, our job in Africa, is to market Africa's opportunities. And I'm sure that everybody around the world recognizes these dynamics. Africa is too critical not to be looked at, and Africa is not going to beg its way into development. Africa is going to trade and invest its way into development. I have no doubt that Africa will be the lighthouse for the world under any circumstance. At the UAE, you have $65 billion a year that's actually going from UAE to Africa, much higher than other parts of the Gulf countries. I think Saudi Arabia does about $25 billion, Qatar probably about $7.8 billion. So UAE is very, very important. But this point I want to make, because there are a lot of investors here. You hear a lot of things about Africa in terms of risk. Well, look, you walk across the street, it's a risk. You eat food, it's a risk. Africa's risk is not different from any part of the world. It's a risk-return world. We actually asked Moody's Analytics to look at the risk profile of Africa, of investments in infrastructure over the last 14 years. Guess what they found, Eleni? They found that the rate of loss in Africa is 1.7%. That in Latin America was about 13%. The one in Eastern Europe was more about 10%. In Western Asia, it was about 4.5%. So Africa is less riskier than any other part of the world.
When we speak about risk, it's a language that we also use. We speak about the youth bulge, we speak about resource curse. We can change the language often to reflect the opportunities and the realities on the ground, and which is why this panel is so important, because we can speak about the new economic revolution from our perspective. The progress we've seen in Sierra Leone has been largely driven by the kind of leadership that we have. His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio has made it a point to invest in human capital. So the reforms that we have seen in education, the reforms that we've seen in gender, the reforms that we've seen in good governance have all slowly been adding up, and you can see the dividends beginning to pay off quite quickly. One of the most critical things that we've done is we've focused on inclusion and impact. The president just at the UN last year told the world about radical inclusion. And radical inclusion isn't just a random idea. It's that the things that work have to work for everyone. I do feel that when there's economic progress, positively for a few, there will be civil and political chaos for the majority. So if we're speaking about new economic revolution, it has to be for everyone. It has to be inclusive, and the impacts that we speak about must be felt by everyone. And this is not too difficult, really, to do. We just have to shift our mindsets. we speak about critical minerals. Sierra Leone has had lots of mineral conversations. It's mostly been negative, but in cabinet recently, one of the things that His Excellency is trying to have us do is to think about what I call consensus concessions. It's so easy to speak about concessions from any one of these countries or from private sector that is 100 years, lots of waivers, employees coming from abroad, everything gets shipped out. That's not consensus.
Bad deals, by the way, which turned things into a curse, and I think what people talk about,
Yes.
that to break away from that is to stop signing bad deals.
And I think
what
the
leverage
reason-
do you have to say, listen, no, we can't do it at this rate?
I think leadership and inclusion comes back. Look, we sign, the Minister of Finance is here, we sign, we sit, we bring these agreements in. If we think about, we said investment, if we think about not just pennies, but the people and the planet, then the deals and the agreements we sign with our conscience will work for the people, will bring economic value for everyone, for the investor, for the government, and the people who are there. And here's an example. Sierra Leone has, I think, a quarter of the world's deposits of rutile. Foreign companies have been mining rutile since the 1900s. The agreement that was taken to Parliament many years ago was terrible for the country. The country will export all this rutile, and we still got all these waivers and exemptions by that foreign company. Until recently, a Sierra Leonean has bought rutile, the company, and we're beginning to engage and see now how those resources get to stay in the country. We can now speak about how that ties in with energy because they are invested in energy. We can think about how they can employ people. The dynamics change. So we as a government, leadership, again, which is why I said leadership has been at the heart, and His Excellency President Bio has been doing this, investing in people, investing in planets, investing, and then the pennies, is that when we place people at the center, everyone, inclusion, we use our conscience to make sure that the deals that we sign are bringing in more energy, are tied with infrastructure, are tied with the ports that are there, are making sure that there are schools that are being built. And when that happens, our people will win. And I think then it becomes not a youth bulge, but it becomes an opportunity where young people in Sierra Leone can be the leaders. The CEO of the company is a young guy. This company I'm just talking about that was bought by a Sierra Leonean. Those things are happening, and we'll see more of it as we get more young people who are in leadership.
Yeah, and from a private sector perspective, tell me why it makes sense to invest on the continent. What kind of returns can people expect? And why you shouldn't be looking at these perceptions that Africa equates to, negativity and it's high risk, so therefore you've got to expect high return, which is when essentially we start to see bad deals being signed.
I speak as a private sector person who has investments on 4 continents, including the Gulf states, and someone who also has a diversified investment portfolio from power, oil and gas, financial services, and healthcare. There's nowhere else we get the kind of returns on investments as what we make in Africa. I say to people often that the glass is half full. You may decide to see risks or challenges, or you may see opportunities. But ability to identify opportunities and structure your approach in a way that addresses and mitigates those risks confers extra competitive advantage on you and your business. So I speak to our friends here. As the president of the African Development Bank said, no better person to say it because he has the statistics. He sees what's going on the continent. There's nowhere else that gives you the kind of returns on investment as what you make on the continent. Yes, stereotyped information provided in a certain way that all you see is challenges. But just look at us, and we keep investing in our group. We generate We have capacity to generate 2,000 megawatts of electricity on a daily basis, and today we generate about 750 megawatts, which is very significant on the continent. There's nowhere else you can invest in power sector and you start paying dividend to investors year 3. That happens in Africa. We are in financial services sector, huge, significant returns on investment. So the time is now, and there are certain factors shaping all of this. If you look at the demography in Africa, as our moderator Eleni said, the median age is 19. In other parts of the world, it's 38, 32. This is huge opportunity. 1.5 billion people, over 65% under the age of, as I said before, under the age of 30. So this is significant investment opportunity for everyone. Let us invest, but we also believe, and I said that we have a few challenges on the continent. We don't run away from these challenges, but those are not challenges that impede the decision to invest in a market that holds so much potential for investors.
President Adesina, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the point you made about, and also the Chief Minister's point about the natural resource cost. I don't believe there's anything called natural resource cost. I'm an economist. People say that all the time. The issue is not how can resources that are supposed to make you rich be a cost. What you have is a cost of leadership, lack of transparency, lack of accountability in the management of those natural resources. And that's what we at the African Development Bank try to do. So you take, for example, you were talking about the case of Sierra Leone, but if you pick, for example, the DRC Congo, okay, we have challenges there now, but we're going to solve those problems. The issue is total amount of resources back of the envelope in that area is probably $24 trillion. And so the issue is, how do we structure deals that are in the interest of our economies, in which royalties and taxes that needs to be paid are paid, and that's why we have the Africa Legal Support Facility at the African Development Bank to help Sierra Leone and DRC, several other countries to be able to structure deals that are in their own interest.